All right. Well, obviously, heavy hearts today in the world of football, not just college football, but football in general. Mike Leach, Mark, passing away today on a Tuesday that we're recording this at the age of 61. It's kind of a wild 72 hours, really, of reports. On Sunday, he was airlifted out of his home. We didn't really know what happened. Everyone was saying it was serious. Yesterday, the reports come down that he had a heart attack and possibly some seizures as a result as well. And then today, the unfortunate news that he has passed. Still a young guy, Mississippi State head coach, long time college football icon, really. So yeah, it's a tough day for the world of football, really.
Yeah, I mean, he has so many connections across the football landscape, and as a coach with people on his staff, as a player, getting it really kind of revolutionizing the modern kind of air raid spread in space, offense. I was so shocking to me because I missed all the reports on Sunday and Monday. I had no idea. If you would ask me at 9 a.m. this morning, like about Mike Leach, I'd be like, love Mike Leach. Would have no idea that
Oh
he
wow,
was.
yeah.
Yeah, I missed all that. I don't know how I missed it on Twitter and everything. But my little brother texted me, just goes, Mike Leach, damn, and I was like, you don't get a text like that without immediately knowing, like, oh, okay, well, something's really, really, as horrible has happened. And Mississippi State, that's gut wrenching to your program too. I mean, he'd only been with Mississippi State a couple years now, and they kind of pried him away from Washington and brought him in, and it was a kind of a surprise move getting Mike Leach to the SEC as it was, just tragic. 61 is too young of a to say that you've lived your fullest life, especially with the way he coached and the way he was as a great interview and his perspective on the world. And so he will be sorely missed as just a total football guy and a person who lived, breathed, ate, slept, and drank football, and very, very, unique character. One of probably the most unique character in all of college football for sure.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the articles really coming out are just about his quotes over the years and the hilarious interviews that he would give and go down the rabbit hole of talking about the conference mascots and how they would fare in a battle against each other. And I mean, the guy's just one of one. And that's why, a lot of the stories coming out about him, obviously when you're a high profile position as you are being a head coach in any sport at the college or pro level, you have a reach, but you can tell by the way that people talk about them when they pass kind of what type of legacy they left behind. Mike Leach, all the stories are just of what a kind person he was. There's that video of him folding chairs after a game in which they lost, I believe, at an away game, folding chairs on the sidelines so that the staff, didn't have to. Probably a little bit out of frustration too, but he's like, I might as well channel this to help people out. I mean, yeah, it seemed like a good dude. And his coaching tree is just so impressive, Mark. I mean, that's really where you see the influence. I mean, just a couple, names off the top of the head are like the Lincoln Rileys and the Cliff Kingsburys of the world who have gone on to have great success. Obviously, with Lincoln being a young protege himself, and tons and tons of other guys in the assistant coaching ranks and things like that. Wes Welker is a part of Mike Leach's tree and things like that. So yeah, guy definitely made an impact and still young at 61. So that's a tough loss for not just Mississippi State and the community, but the world of college football and football in general. You mentioned his influence on the air raid offense. Seeing it a lot in the NFL nowadays, obviously, and Cliff Kingsbury and the Cardinals, the primary kind of implementation of that type of offense with Kyler Murray, and that kind of gives us a segue into this week 13 recap with Kyler Murray essentially, or week 14. I'm mixing these
14,
weeks up
yeah,
now.
I know.
So week 14.
Crazy.
Kyler going down right off the bat in the Monday night game, yesterday, and now it's confirmed torn ACL. He's done for the year, and really, that's going to put 2023 into a lot of questions. I mean,
Yeah.
especially with the style of play that he has. Right, it's a non-contact injury. This one was a few plays into the game, and goes on to the Cardinals. Losing this one, but it's just a crazy sequence of events from the Arizona being a team last year that was on such a high for the vast majority to then falling
11
off
and
a cliff.
0. Yeah, I mean they started 10-0 or something like that. I
I
mean,
think it was 10-0, and then to have the weird carryover this year where nothing was put together really from the get-go. They didn't have their weapons. Now Kyler gets hurt. Just a really tough year for Arizona all around, but really difficult for Kyler. And you mentioned in your tweet, this is the reason why guys take those contracts early on. The Lamar Jacksons of the world can take note. This kind of stuff can happen, and then your team's really in a shitty spot. We'll see kind of what 2023 holds, but this is not good news at all for Kyler or the Cardinals.
tons of thoughts on this. My gut goes immediately like it sucks for Kyler Murray. Like, and it sucks for us as fans of football because he is an exciting player, and he's a guy that we've talked a ton about this year because it's been a weird year for him and that team after signing the giant contract. Obviously, you take out all the things that we said in the sense that I was very vocal about I wouldn't have signed Kyler Murray to that deal. And you, obviously that all of that's hindsight's 2020. Looking ahead now, that is all you can do. You're absolutely right. Kyler Murray probably will miss all of next year. I mean, it would be precautionary and smart for them the way he plays. Even if you say a year from now is usually when you could say, the Adrian Peterson type of like, all right, you can get back to playing football, maybe in one calendar year, but by week 14 of next year, like what are you going to be playing for if you're the Cardinals? Who knows at that point in time? I think if you're the Cardinals, it gives you a little bit of a window and opportunity to do a couple things. I would obviously, try to make sure you keep Colt McCoy. He's a very good backup and he's a great presence in the room. But I think if I'm the Cardinals, I would look to draft someone in the second, third, fourth round and who plays maybe that kind of Kyler Murray-esque type of style or system, who you could trust to be like, hey, we this is a guy who maybe did a little air raid in college and just kind of whip the ball around. And who knows? Because if he's the type of person that shows up and plays really, really well and you start him as a rookie, you could always trade him to a team, get some picks back for him. It opens up a lot for what the Cardinals will do next year. I hate to say it, but you look at it as well. Cliff Kingsbury's job was very much like maybe he gets fired, and maybe that's the other thing the Cardinals do. Maybe they look at this as a reset, and they say now it's a clean slate, and we bring someone else in new, and then Kyler will start fresh with that person in 2024. But my gut says this gives Cliff Kingsbury another year. This gives Cliff Kingsbury, hey, your chance to say, my coaching style with another quarterback or someone else, like, without Kyler, I got to keep the franchise in order. It's a ton of question marks for the Arizona Cardinals, and it doesn't, to me, feel as though like a lot of them are going to get answered until after the draft, after the season. What are they going to do? Do they stick with Cliff Kingsbury? Do they draft another quarterback? And I don't think Kyler Murray plays football until the start of 2024. It'll be with the Cardinals. I don't think there's no reason to say he's done, but it's a huge blow when you're paying a guy that much money. You commit your franchise to him, and now you're going to miss a huge chunk of that, a year and a half almost of that contract. He's out with an injury. Just brutal.
The only thing that I would maybe push back on in terms of the potential absences, I wonder if they're gonna just try and have him come back and say you can't play Kyler Murray football. Like next year, you're gonna come back, we're gonna start you, and because quarterbacks don't have to cut all the time, you could play on that ACL, and we'll just have you staying in the pocket. The problem is their offensive line isn't anything to write home about. him under center would be a problem. Everything would have to be out
Yeah.
from the gun, which I mean, they most of their offense is under the gun. Um, I do wonder about that. I think they'd be better suited. You just pay this guy a lot of money to do what you were saying. Just sit him down, maybe have him come back late December to knock off some rust, and then get into the next season, fully ready to go.
The only
But yeah,
reason
I mean, look, you could strike gold. Like the 49ers had Mr. Irrelevant, Brock Purdy, looks like a professional quarterback
Yeah.
who could probably be a really good backup in this league, if not a very low end starter, or who knows, maybe even just an average starter. Who knows? I mean, you could find guys like that in the draft, and now you don't have to have an injury next year to bring them in. They can actually just come in through the offseason if you want.
We'll talk a ton. This is a big offseason story, and we want to get to the games.
Oh, yeah.
My last thought on this would just be like my other instant thought was, do you dangle a 3rd round pick in front of the Jets for Zach Wilson like today? And just, I know it's past the trade deadline. Maybe you can't do it now, but like, hey, the Jets clearly are moving on from Zach Wilson. They're going to try to get as much as they can, but I don't know what the market is for Zach Wilson. But if you're the Cardinals, you say to yourself, all right, he's kind of Kyler Murray-esque, right? You know what I mean? Kyler Murray-esque.
Sure.
And you bring him in, and it gives Zach Wilson a chance to say, hey, this is going to be your team for 1 year. And you got D-Hop, you got, Ertz will be back. You get, you have Robbie Anderson, and we're just going to try to, win as many games.
And Hollywood Brown.
And just say, hey, you got a year. It's going to be Kyler's job when he comes back. And unless you lead us to a Super Bowl or something, and otherwise, we'll find a new home for you in the future, or keep you as Kyler Murray's backup.
I mean, you'd almost be better served to have a really rough year and get another high back, 2 years of decently high picks. And because they're not, I mean, they have the talent to potentially win now, but they don't seem to be in win now mode, and their defense needs some work. So maybe you just mail it in, let Colt McCoy get you 6 wins next year. And, what are they at right now? They're at 5. Are they at 5, 6 wins right now? They're at 4. They're at 4 wins right now. I mean, they'll get a top 10 pick this year, maybe get a top 10 pick next year. And all of a sudden Kyler comes back, 2024 with 2, high profile picks there. That could be the method for Arizona if they keep everyone intact. If their plan is we're going to have Cliff Kingsbury ride this out, then maybe they do that and keep building what they've got going there.
It's just interesting because this is, I don't want the injury for us to forget the fact that, and we'll remind ourselves in the offseason, they were in win now mode now. Like they went all in.
Yeah.
They made moves.
They were.
To go all in, win now mode, trading for Robbie Anderson, like making moves. And so, I don't want that. They deserve some criticism for this. It's a disaster of a year for the Cardinals.
Yeah.
And now this is the icing on the cake. So what can they try to make positive out of this? And maybe you're right. Maybe it is tank the rest of this year, tank all of next year. And you have Kyler Murray with 2 years left on his deal, coming back fully healthy in 2024 with a revamped roster. Maybe that's it. I don't know.
Well, and the Rams, have been really bad. I mean, that was almost a gift for Arizona. Like, this year you could take advantage. Now, Seattle has surprised somewhat, but they're not the world beaters that the Rams were last year. So this was the year for Arizona to really take advantage, and they shit the bed.
Seattle, San Fran, and the Rams will all be in win now mode next year. Like the Seattle will be on the beginning of whatever their thing is. The Niners are always in win now mode, and the Rams will be in the last ditch effort with Stafford, Donald in that core for sure. So maybe the Cardinals going in tank mode next year is the smart thing to do.
Well, speaking of the Rams, that Thursday night game that was awful until it wasn't. Baker Mayfield, 2 days after arriving in LA, after the Rams acquired him via waivers, put in a claim, started John Wolford, quickly pulled him after the first series, said, all right, Baker, it's your turn, going to run the Sean McVay offense here, which he does have some familiarity with. And he mentioned his time with Kevin Stefanski, who is certainly familiar with Sean McVay and his system. That probably helped with the verbiage. But Baker, came kind of ready to just be the gunslinger that we know him to be. The Raiders started off hot. Then they completely blew this game, blew it away. Couldn't put the hammer down in the second half. let the Rams kind of crawl back into this thing, and then Baker Mayfield, the 1.5 minute drill, leads them 98 yards, a couple dynamite throws, including the touchdown at the end
Yeah.
to Van Jefferson. Heroic effort from Baker Mayfield. They win 17-16 over the Raiders. And, it was a good moment. It was one of those where Baker had his, moment in the sun, so to speak, and kind of was able to put the critics to bed for a day. I think this was just an awful collapse by the Raiders. Absolutely terrible. Like how can you not put this team away? That is just, on bare bones, no Cooper Kupp, running game's been a mess. Allen Robinson's not who they thought. I mean, there was just no one there. And now you're working with a quarterback who's known the playbook for 24 hours and a cup of coffee. Brutal for the Raiders, but, kudos to the Rams for finding a way to win and Baker getting something done.
Really scared, bad coaching in the second half for the Raiders. Derek Carr's stat line is the type of stat line that you look at and you go, that's not a top 10 quarterback. Top 10 quarterbacks don't ever have stat lines like Derek Carr had. And that's what the problem we always struggle with Derek Carr is that he's the king. He's the front runner of that other group of that guys that can, on any given Sunday beat anyone in the NFL. And then he has stinkers like this where it's like his coach doesn't trust him and they game plan to keep the ball out of Derek Carr's hand. And it was a brutal, brutal second half with Devontae Adams. I think no catches in the second half, even though he had a great first half. It just was bad coaching for the Raiders, and they deserved to lose that game by the end of it. I will say this for Baker Mayfield. I said this on my Saturday show. I think that complete resurgence. He went from being a nuclear waste dump that no one wanted to touch, and the Panthers were like, all right, we'll take a flyer on him. I think he absolutely has a chance to completely resurrect his career in the next couple of weeks. If he can, he doesn't have to win every game, but if he can play well and in Sean McVay's system, show up, it could get him a job with the Rams to be Matt Stafford's backup, depending on Matt Stafford's health to start the year. Like he could be their starter, or i.e. openings like Arizona and other places where people might take a flyer on Baker Mayfield and saying, damn, we don't have a better option. And this guy is the guy that we could bring in, if we're in the right system. We saw it with Sean McVay that he can thrive. So that's all the Rams are playing for it the rest of this year to try to sell tickets to be interesting because everything's focused on the start of next year on an absolute coaching disaster for the Raiders.
Yeah, it was pretty rough. Speaking to your Derek Carr stat line, 11 of 20, 137 yards and 2 picks. Not good. Josh Jacobs was his typical self. He got a little banged up in this one, but the Raiders are kind of a mess. But I think McDaniels is going to get a little bit longer of a leash than a lot of these other coaches, and there's been more good we've seen from him versus maybe his counterpart in the AFC West, Nathaniel Hackett. Moving on to the Sunday schedule of games, Ravens at the Steelers, kind of a boring, typical Steelers-Ravens game where it's down to a 2-point margin of victory. Ravens win 16-14. Kenny Pickett out early in this game with a concussion, and Mitch Trubisky comes in. It's kind of weird because they actually moved the ball pretty well. When Mitch is a different quarterback coming off the bench. He really is. But then obviously the problems came up where he got way too liberal with his decisions. Threw 3 picks, all in the plus side of the field. Not good. 2 in the red zone, and that was just the killer right there. 3 interceptions by Trubisky, doomed the Steelers. And the Ravens, by the way, their backup quarterback, Tyler Huntley, gets hurt in this one. They have to turn to a third-string quarterback as well. So it was just a mess of a game. But the Ravens, it was a huge win for them because they keep pace now with Cincinnati for that NFC North crown. And the Ravens are very much in it with potentially getting Lamar back as early as this next week, probably the week after.
Yeah, no, the great win for the Ravens because, again, when you're missing Lamar Jackson, your backups have got to win you. Can you go 500 or at least win one, right? So it keeps the Ravens alive. The Ravens are very much alive. So huge win for them. Not worth talking much else about the Ravens until, Lamar's back. I have 2 points on the Steelers. I'll turn it back to you. Number one, I'm hearing some chatter that this is a Mike Tomlin, yeah, we get it. Your offense, rookie quarterback, he gets down, but this defense is being paid a lot of money. They could not stop J.K. Dobbins. It seemed like the Ravens' game plan was very obvious, and the Steelers just kept, kind of getting gashed for yards. And that's Mike Tomlin's side of the ball, plus Brian Flores. It just seems like maybe it was a hot seat kind of cranked up moment for Tomlin. And then the other thing I'll turn back to is, listen, Kenny Pickett, concussions now seem to be a problem for this kid.
Yeah,
and that is a scary, scary thing, especially in today's NFL. So your focus starts to go to this offensive line absolutely needs addressing and revamping for this kid. And they have got to start trying to figure out ways to help protect him a little bit more from himself, maybe in the decisions he's making. So what say you to those 2 points? Because I'm a little confused. I like Mike Tomlin. I wouldn't fire Mike Tomlin, but it seems as though this is one of those where the rabid fans the Steelers fans are a little bit like, what the bleep? But losing to a division rival will do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's very frustrating, and anyone's going to be frustrated with their head coach from time to time. I've always had my frustrations with Tomlin, and some of his strengths are also his weaknesses. So you got to take the good with the bad. The defense has always had its moments where they're just situationally out of sync a lot of times. And part of it is they are just like really top heavy with a few, high profile guys, that most teams would love to have in a Cam Hayward, Omika Fitzpatrick, TJ Watt, but filling out the rest of the roster and their decision making on who they employ at the linebacker core, who they put into some of their sub package plays. Those are curious moments. And in this type of game, you do have to be able to stop the run, and they weren't able to do that in key moments, especially on that final drive. And then, a key drive for the Ravens, a scoring drive. Well, you can't let a third string quarterback drive 85 yards down the field and get a score on you when you're paid that much as a defense. All of that said, to me, this isn't the game to like have those types of reservations about Tomlin, because Mitch Trubisky blew this game for them. I mean, if your defense lets up 16 points, that you should always win that game. I don't care if it's the Ravens game or not. You should be able to score 17 points against any team in this league. And I think if Kenny Pickett was in this game, they might have been able to pull this one out. They let Calais Campbell block a field goal at the end of the half, who is literally the greatest blocker of field goals that I think I've ever known. And he was untouched. Like, you can't, that's a terrible mental error. And Trubisky's 3 picks took at minimum 9 points off the board. So it's really hard to say that the defense blew this game. Although they did on that final drive, there was a lot more to it than that. So we'll see. Tomlin today, I didn't get to listen to the whole press conference. Tomlin did not commit to Mitch starting this next week. Mason Rudolph might be getting the start if Kenny Pickett doesn't clear concussion protocol. And at this point, I mean, I don't have a preference on who goes. And,
it doesn't really matter.
It is what it is. I would love if Kenny was healthy, but yeah, to your point about the concussions, man, that is scary. That's 2 in 10 games for Kenny Pickett. And that you don't want to mess around with that stuff. It was curious because he went back in for a series after that hit, and then they took him out. So I'm interested to see kind of what the explanation was for that when I listened to the rest of that press conference, because that doesn't really jive very well. And we'll talk about when we get to more of the Monday night game with Devontae Parker, how there's still a lot of things they're working out with this concussion protocol, clearly. The Bills at home, the Jets are giving them fits, and the Bills almost lost this one, but they win it by 8, 20-12. But the Jets, are looking good overall. Mike White took one of the hardest hits I've ever seen. Like, just a free runner. Matt Milano, my God, just comes sprinting in. He had like a 10-yard head start right at Mike White's ribs. And the dude somehow comes back in this game twice.
Well, Joe Flacco want to play football. Joe Flacco, if Joe Flacco starts, he's fine. Like, if he is like
right.
Joe Flacco is the least, he's the best backup for now, like the Colt McCoy situation, where you're like, oh, I got to start a guy for like
but not for a spark to be inserted.
For like a spark off the bench. He's the worst. He's the opposite of Fitzmagic in that way. He's the opposite.
I mean, yeah, he's like on par with like the Andy Dalton off the bench in mid game. Like, I'm not excited about this.
He's just not that guy. He's not that. You're not that guy, pal.
You're not that guy, pal. Yeah. So I mean, it was an interesting moment for the Jets, and I think Mike White showed that he's got that leadership quality clearly, and certainly made some throws.
Yeah.
It was interesting that I don't know if you saw the snippet that's going around with Josh Allen being asked. Well, he wasn't even asked the question. The reporter just straight up said, "Well, this doesn't look like a offense that can win the Super Bowl." And Josh just said, "Okay." And then he just sat there like, "Is that what the heck, dude? Was that like
what
a
do you know?"
or,
Yeah, I love Josh Allen. I love that.
Yeah, oh, he's great. He's great.
And to that question, because it's not even a question. It's just like a statement.
And also the Jets defense is really good, and it's a division opponent.
Divisional opponent. Like I leave this game. I'm like, all right, that's exactly how that game should have gone. The Jets are fighting for more. The Bills are at home. And the Bills need to just get wins. Like that's all that matters right now for the Bills is clearing these hurdles, getting wins, and they got that win. And no, the Bills offense, again, in that moment, that game did not look like a Super Bowl winning offense. But you know what's going to happen in the Super Bowl? You're going to play a good defense, and you're going to be in a tight game. And the Bills were playing a good defense in a tight game. They found a way to win. It's good. That's pretty much it. The only question I still have about the Jets is, this Mike White thing is fun right now, and he's going to play the rest of the season when he's healthy. He's the starter. But I think there is moments where you do see the ceiling very apparent with Mike White. And Mike White's not like I think it's his third or fourth year in the league. Like, he's not, and he's had playing time last year. Like, he's not like, this is the first we're seeing of him. I'm just wondering at what point in time, it seems like the team really loves him. But at what point in time do you, as the general manager, the coach, also have to be real with the team? Like, Mike White's not going to be the guy next year, right? Like, he's not going to be the guy next year.
I would imagine he's not, because I do think that they're going to give Zach Wilson another. I mean, you spent the number 2 overall pick on this.
I think Zach's done. I really do.
See, I don't know. I think he should be. I think I think we've seen enough, but I just don't know if they're ready to just move off of of that. Even though the staff isn't like, he's not necessarily their guy, right?
Yeah.
I still feel like the pressure from ownership. We spent a number 2 overall pick on this guy. You got to give him one more year. That's kind of how I think they're going to go about it. I don't think they should, but either way, yeah, I don't know what you do about Mike White's situation. The thing is, Flacco might very well retire at the end of the year. And if you are going with Zach Wilson, then you still want Mike White to be your backup. Like, he's shown you enough.
No,
but are you going to have to pay a little bit more? I don't know what his contract situation is. But it is interesting. Like, where the Jets go, especially with the picks they have.
Yeah.
What they decide to do this year could be very telling, because that's a really good group and a great defense. Like, you're not going to have that defense for very much longer,
If Mike White can lead you to the playoffs and win you a playoff game, then maybe you do start the season next year with Mike White. Maybe that is how you feel. But the Jets are just in that teetering, because they're a good team. They're a good team. They just they feel a little like the future is so murky, and they're just kind of every game just focus on this game, and the season will end. And then you got to start asking these questions about the Jets.
Yeah. Well, the Bengals were at home taking on the Browns, so another divisional game here.
The Harambe off the back for Joe Burrow.
There you go. Finally beat the Cleveland Browns. Deshaun Watson continues to not look good early on, and we kind of expected this from him. Jamar Chase has a classic Jamar Chase day. I know fantasy managers, myself, being a T. Higgins owner in one league, was pretty frustrated. Because he was not put on the injury report at all for the game, no injury designation, and he goes out for one snap, and he wasn't even allowed to. Apparently he snuck his way onto the field. And then they were like, hey, you're not playing today, get off. So that was interesting. So they didn't have him. Tyler Boyd went down with an injury. So they were really only working with Jamar Chase and a couple other guys, but Joe Burrow helps lead this team to victory once again. After a scoreless first quarter, they go and win 23-10. So kind of the same thing, I think, with the Bills, like, just got to stack wins. And the Bengals more so, because now that we talked about the Ravens, like they are needing to stay afloat atop the division, because obviously you want to win the division for more than just bragging rights. You want to win the division and be in contention for, a higher seed Probably not going to get the 1 the Bengals are, but to get a 2 seed, 3 seed, those are still very much in play, and a divisional game guarantees you a home playoff. So yeah, the Bengals very much needing to stack these wins, and they'll take it against a divisional opponent at home.
Absolutely. It's a great win for the Bengals. Again, Josh, I mean, Watson has not looked great. I will say this about Watson is you're watching more of his football. You're starting to remind yourself about what on the football field, what we loved about watching Deshaun Watson. It reminds you of that. Remember, they had the 21-0 lead on the Chiefs in that playoff game, and that was the Chiefs Super Bowl run. Is that Watson is like a bigger Lamar Jackson in some ways. I mean, his arm is so lively, explosive, deep balls, like big play making ability. You think about those games with with the Brandon Cooks, and like that's what he was there. Like, that's like what made him special. And then being able to make plays with his legs. And I just feel like Cleveland needs to adjust. Like Cleveland's roster doesn't feel like it's going to fit Deshaun Watson. They need to go get the Tyreek Hill, the Jalen Waddle. Like, I mean, Amari Cooper's a great receiver and he's a good, but like they need explosive over the top pieces for Deshaun Watson that'll help open up their run game, because they won't be able to load the box because you have over the top threats. Like that's what the Browns need to, I think, help him feel, kind of start getting back to playing what made Deshaun Watson special on the field. But Joe Burrow is great right now. I think Joe Burrow absolutely could be the MVP of the league if the Bengals run the table. The Bengals run the table and kind of win out, get to the 2 seed with how they started and the wins he stacked along the way in what's a brutal stretch. He's got Brady next week. I love watching Joe Burrow play. To me, he is quarterback number 3 in this league. I would take if you're saying you have to have a guy for this week, next week, next year, 5 years, whatever it is. Like he is that number 3 person behind only Mahomes and Allen right now, and he is just electric to watch.
Yeah, he is. He's got the whole package and a great leader as well. Clearly elevates his teammates.
Bengals defense is better than it was last year, and they were in the Super Bowl last year.
Yeah, that's a good point. The Cowboys barely beat the Texans. The Texans were, seemingly in control in this game. Even though they were only up 23-17 going into the fourth quarter. But Dak Prescott helps lead the team down the field, at the end of the game, and then Ezekiel Elliott gets the game winner. This is one of those games, honestly, where I know a lot of people are taking away like, hey, they won a game and that's all they have to do, and I understand that argument because it's true. I mean, they're 10-3, and that's good. I'm not buying in. Like a lot of the power rankings have them the 3rd best team in the league. I just still don't see it. And to me, I know the Texans defense is good. They're 1-11. And so for the Cowboys to almost lose to this team, I think they should deserve some criticism for not being maybe as well-rounded of a team as we'd like to think they are. What say you about the Cowboys in this win?
I say there's only one reason you feel that way, and I think let's just be honest about it. It's Dak. Like Dak doesn't give you enough confidence to feel that great about the Cowboys. But I will say this: they do get credit for winning that game. It's one of those weird things that you don't think of necessarily as the Texans and the Cowboys as rivals, but in state, I mean, they don't play much, like because they're different conferences, different divisions, even in different conferences. And so, the Texans are like I think they got up for that game. And I think, the Cowboys were 17-point favorites. Like it's hard. Like they're a team, I think, that sleptwalked a little bit. And then, kudos to them. They were good enough, unlike the Vikings who sleptwalk with the Lions, even though they should have been feeling all the disrespect in the world because they were underdogs. You know what I mean? Literally, the Lions were 2-point favorites, and that the fucking Vikings are a 10-win team. They should have had all the juice, but the Cowboys were able to find it. I'll say this. The Cowboys and the Vikings are very similar teams. They have great offensive weapons. They have quarterbacks who are limited, but when they play really well, distribute it really, really well. They have great running games. They have solid offensive lines. The separator for the Cowboys, so I feel better about the Cowboys than do the Vikings, at least long term, is that they have Micah Parsons. And that dude is a game wrecker. Like he is a game wrecker. And I can see Micah Parsons in the playoffs wrecking a game and winning a game. Problem is Cowboys will be on the road. And like that's going to suck for the Cowboys because I do think they're a different team on the road a little bit. Yeah, I don't have a ton of confidence in the Cowboys either. I don't. I like I've said all year, to me, it is the Eagles in the NFC. And right now, maybe the Niners. We'll talk about them here coming up.
Yeah, we'll see how that kind of road shakes out. But yeah, it's surprising to see the Cowboys at 10-3 because I feel like all season we haven't really seen much inspiring play from them, despite their 50-point outing last week that we said we're not going to ride that high. They followed that up with a pretty, big low, despite it being a 27-23 win over the Texans. You talked about the Lions, an 11-point win at home over the Vikings, so I guess they deserve to be favored. Clearly, the bettors in Vegas knew something about this one. Minnesota, it is one of those things, like they are limited, certainly, and their defense isn't very good. And so that's going to be a problem come playoff time. They're shooing to win the North, and so that's good for Minnesota. But to go on the road against the Lions, which we know are an improved team, but to lose by double digits, that is concerning for that team, in which I thought, Kevin O'Connell had as much, a claim to be the coach of the year as anyone else in the league. That's a loss right there that probably, potentially puts you out of contention for something like that. And then for the Lions, I mean, it does appear, man, that like Jared Goff isn't just like a short-term solution for this team. I mean, I really think that they view him as their franchise guy for the next, 6 years.
Well,
to kind of build this thing.
You definitely can sign Jared Goff to a team-friendly, like 2 or 3 year deal, kind of like the Ryan Tannehill deal, where it's like, like right now, Jared Goff or Ryan Tannehill, Jared Goff or Derek Carr, Jared Goff. Jared Goff has better numbers than Kirk Cousins. People would say Kirk, but I would argue Jared Goff. Jared Goff's numbers right now better than Dak's. Even do the averages. I know Dak missed a couple games, so like Jared Goff is playing like right there up at that level of like floating around top 10 quarterback football. And he's developed an incredible relationship with Brown. They got Williams now, their first round pick out of Alabama, finally playing after the ACL. He is electric. The Lions are playing right now, throw away the record. How they are playing right now, they are playing like a top 3 team in the NFC. Eagles, Niners, Lions. Like that's it. Their defense has holes, but this offense is scoring. They buy in. They are playing loose. They are playing with nothing to lose. They've won 5 out of the last 6, and the only loss was that incredible Thanksgiving Day game, 3-point loss to the Bills, where they were beating the Bills most of that game. Their defense just got leaky. I'm not saying the Lions are going to win playoff games, but right now the Lions deserve to be a playoff team. Will they make it happen? They got to kind of run, the table and hope for some help from the Giants, Commanders, and Seahawks kind of falling off the map a little bit, which the Giants and the Seahawks are. So I could see the Lions sneaking on in, and I'm rooting for it right now because they are playing really, really good football. You have to be honest about it. History tells us they're the Lions, so they'll probably end up losing to the Packers week 17 and blow it all, or week 18, whatever. But kudos to them. They're a little bit of like a year ahead of schedule. We said with Dan Quinn, this year was about getting to that like 6-7 win mark and showing just improvement over the year. They're going to beat that, I think, and they're going to set themselves up for. You start looking at this Lions roster. They add another pass rusher, a corner, get a veteran linebacker, and then like one more guard. And this, like, all of a sudden you're like, no, that's a legitimate playoff team in the NFC, especially like going forward into next year. So they're not too far away. I'd rather spend my time focusing on the Lions because right now they're a better football team playing better football than the Vikings.
They got some dudes there for sure. Panay Sewell getting a nice third down conversion catch. That's great.
Did you see that Dan Quinn said he had no idea that was happening?
Dan Campbell.
Sorry, I know. Dan Quinn. Dan Campbell had no idea that was happening, which I love. That. Look up that quote later.
That's awesome. I didn't know.
He was like, I was distracted, and all of a sudden I look on the field, and Panay Sewell's catching a ball, and he's literally like, what the hell's going on? Like, that's awesome. I just love it. I love it.
That is great. The Jaguars get a win on the road at the Titans. That was a big game that the Titans needed to have. Jags, huge, inspiring win.
Titans stink.
Dude, Trevor Lawrence looked like the dude in this game. Like he is the past month. This guy has really been elevating his game a ton. I think we are seeing that, click. And with the Doug Peterson system that was going to take some time to develop, I really think we're seeing the start of something great here with Trevor Lawrence. An impassioned win for Jacksonville. They're not going anywhere this year, most likely. I mean, I guess at 5-8 they have an outside chance.
Yeah.
But
the division's
you
so
got to
bad.
you got to be inspired by what you've seen from this team, and to get that win over the Titans. I mean, they do keep their playoff hopes alive just because of if the Titans fall apart here down the stretch. I mean, the South is wide open. I mean, they could get in there with a 9-8 record.
Yeah, no, I love what's happening in Jacksonville. Same thing. I love what's happening in Detroit. These fan bases deserve this. They've gone through so much hell, and they both seem to have coaches that like work. They both seem to find like identities. And Trevor Lawrence, I'm now convinced it's like if we're looking back in 5 years from now, Trevor Lawrence is not the quarterback of the Jags. I'm getting to the point where I'm like, okay, well, the Jags have failed him. He's starting to show enough to where it's like, no. This is your dude. And this is a dude in the league who, maybe it's not the pop we saw with Burrow and Herbert like right away, but all of a sudden you're starting to feel like, oh no, like you get another wide receiver, you improve the tight end position, you help the offensive line a little bit, and there's no reason why Lawrence isn't going like toe to toe with those guys. He's got the measurables, the skills. He looked great in this game. Love it. And for the Titans, I don't want to spend time on them. They'll probably win the division. They'll limp into the playoffs. The Titans need a reboot. They have the right coach. They have a great identity. They need help defensively. They need to they just need an overall reboot. They need to go aggressive. Go get Aaron Rodgers. Make a splash and just try something different with this core for another year before going into a rebuild. Because they have a coach, they have an identity, but there's just no juice. There's just no electricity in Nashville.
Yeah. They need Treylon Burks back. They need to get some of that splash back that they had when AJ Brown was there, and even earlier in the season at times with Burks, given what they spent to get him. The Eagles put on a clinic at New York.
Yeah,
they
don't need
stay
to talk
atop the NFC East. Yeah, really. I mean, they're 12-1. This was no surprise. Jalen Hurts did what he does. AJ Brown connection. They are just such a complete football team. They run the football so well. I don't know how you figure out how to stop these guys. And to your point a little bit earlier, the Giants are starting to show cracks in the foundation, right? And Saquon Barkley has struggled as of late. They're not running the football particularly well. And when that's the case, Daniel Jones is exposed. I mean, they were really able to make up for what they lacked at that position earlier in the year with their strong run game and their defensive play. That's falling off. They're 7-5-1, still have a good shot at the playoffs. But yeah, the Eagles have separated themselves greatly in the conference, and now the division really up for grabs in that 2-3 spot with Washington and the Dallas Cowboys. This is going to be a tough one. It may be all the NFC East in the playoffs, but the Giants are going to have to get some wins here really quick.
Yeah, they're reeling. The Giants, I don't believe in the Giants. I think they'll keep flaming on out. I think Brian Daboll has showed what he needed to show. The dude can coach. He can get a lot out of a little. Start giving him a lot. It's as simple as that. And for the Eagles, I'll just say this. I love the Eagles. Fly, Eagles, fly. Jalen Hurts has been terrific. He's not my MVP. Patrick Mahomes is still my MVP. And this is a great year to want to give Patrick Mahomes MVP, especially if they win out and he keeps playing well. Because it's one of those things where we kind of remind ourselves, he's the best player in football. He's the best quarterback in football. Every single organization would trade for Patrick Mahomes except for probably the Bills because they love Josh Allen, and Josh Allen is close enough to where the franchise is supporting. But if you're the Eagles and the Chiefs called you like, you want to trade, Jalen Hurts for Patrick Mahomes, they'd be like in a heartbeat. Of course, like it's a great reminder that like there are some years where one thing happens and it's like, holy hell, like give that guy the MVP. Even though we know he's not the best player, this is one of those great reminders. Patrick Mahomes should have multiple MVPs in his career. This is another great year. Just give him the MVP again. Remind everyone he's the best quarterback. He's the best player. He deserves it, especially if they go on out. This Chiefs roster is not as good as the Eagles roster. This Chiefs roster, I'd argue, is not as great as the Bills roster. or the Bengals roster when it's fully healthy. Like they got some real holes. Mahomes is his offensive line shaky. He's got no run game. He's got Kelsey, and he's got Dunlap who playing well on defense. And but otherwise, I love Jay. I just want to say I love Jalen Hurts. Eagles are great. My MVP is Patrick Mahomes.
I am in violent agreement with you because that I was looking forward to talking about that when we got to this point because I think Jalen Hurts is awesome. If anything, I mean, look, he deserves to be in the conversation for MVP.
Oh my God,
no question.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's Patrick Mahomes, and it's so clear, and this past game showed it as well. Most improved player, I would be cool giving that to Jalen Hurts from the leap he made from year two to this.
Player of the year, even.
Or something like that. Absolutely, totally on board with all of that. MVP, this is a year where they got rid of Tyreek Hill, had to try and make magic happen, and the Chiefs are 10-3 after this 34-28 win over the Broncos. The Chiefs obviously let it get away from them. They were up 27-0, and the Broncos, crawled their way back. Russell Wilson had a couple, solid moments, probably maybe his best day in the Denver uniform overall. But when it mattered most, once again, Patrick Mahomes was able to come up big for his team, and he got them to that 27-0 lead before they came back at the end of the first half to kind of cut into that. But yeah, Kansas City needs him more than any team needs any other player. And I think it's also evidenced by with the Eagles, like their run game is so good and their defense is so good that if you plugged Brock Purdy in there, they could get to 10 wins. I'm not sure if Brock Purdy on the Chiefs, now maybe Andy Reid magic gets them to 10 wins too. But that's a little bit tougher of a sell, especially because this team can't run the football nearly as well. And when they do, it's largely because they have to give so much respect to the deep passing game from Patrick Mahomes.
Agreed. No, I think it leads in, the Chiefs win over Denver. Listen, people are like, oh, that game got close. The Chiefs were up so big, and it gets a bad Denver team. Like, again, that's one of those, we're all human.
You don't want to give them room, though,
I know, we've watched enough football, but Patrick Mahomes is undefeated in his life as a starter in the NFL against his own division on the road. That's all
it's just crazy. That is a crazy, on the road.
Might be crazier than 7 Super Bowl wins. That is an insane stat. He has never lost. If you're a Broncos, a Chargers, or a Raiders fan, and you go to every home game against the Chiefs, you have not beaten Patrick Mahomes at home when he's played. It's insane.
Yeah, that's not a recipe for continued success moving forward. If you're in the division with Patrick Mahomes, maybe why Tom Brady wouldn't ever consider going to the AFC West, probably for good reason. Yeah. Speaking of Tom Brady, the Buccaneers, a dreadful performance on the road. Tom is
angry,
really struggling. The Bucs aged so quickly, and they are just
slow.
They look slow, out of sync. The weapon, he just doesn't have anyone to bail him out anymore, and that's the tough part when you're 45 years old playing quarterback in this league. And by the way, he's never been a mobile guy, so he can't really get out of trouble anymore. Meanwhile, Brock Purdy looked really good in this game, and Christian McCaffrey has now shown that trade was the trade of all trades in probably the last 5 years that I can think of outside of the blockbuster of Tom going to free agency and going to Tampa. But McCaffrey to the 49ers was so important to this team, and he's going to be a big reason for why if they do end up making a deep postseason run, he's the reason for it. But yeah, to me, this was more about the Bucs are in some serious trouble. They are now in danger. We'll get to the Panthers game after this. They are in danger of not winning the NFC South. This is a serious threat to them now.
I'll just say this. I have really quickly in the Bucs. Tom Brady will play football next year. It will not be with the Bucs. That's my prediction right now. Mark it down, December 13th.
I think you're probably right.
I'd bet a lot of money on it if I could. Some sports book give me the odds on that. The Bucs, I'm done. I'm done picking the Bucks to win. I was very on my Saturday show. I was very like they were my upset of the week. I was like they found something. They had some like what a great energetic win for them on Monday night. I bet it got the guys going. Feel good vibes. Like all right, no more yelling, no more screaming. They're going to come out and have a good showing, and they got blasted like shit rocked and against Brock Purdy, and that is like. I get it. Like, I know Shanahan's a part of it. D'Amico Ryans has been incredible with that defense, but it's Brock Purdy, and you got shit rocked. And offensively, what we forgot about with this Bucks team is their offense was built with their receivers, like Godwin, Evans. They are great receivers, but they are guys who run precise route. They are not like scramble around, make a play type of receivers. This is a offense timing, be in your spot at the right time, and he has no time. The Jensen injury and Wirfs, I mean, this offensive line is just a Swiss cheese, and it has been a disaster for the Bucks. It's been a disaster, and I don't think that Todd Bowles is coaching through it well. So I'm done with the Bucks. They may make the playoffs, but I'm done with the Bucks.
I don't see them winning a game in the playoffs. If they do get there, they're probably one and done.
Yeah, the Niners are really they are to me the most intriguing team now to watch every week because they are absolutely a threat to beat the Eagles. I think they could beat the Vikings, the Cowboys, anyone else in the NFC. They are, but a lot of it's going to depend on how they scheme and game plan to help Purdy and kind of keep the momentum of this thing going over the next couple of weeks. And run away with and play some home playoff games. So can they win out? Can they get a record where they host a couple games and keep building an offense around Christian McCaffrey, around Kittle, around Ayuk now with no Deebo Samuel, and keep Purdy upright? They have a good offensive line. They're a fascinating watch right now.
Before we get to the remaining few games, I'll throw this your way. Andrew Siciliano from the NFL Network tweeted this. 6 of the 14 teams that are currently in playoff position have given up more points than they've scored. That would be Tennessee, which is minus 35.
Yeah.
New York, the Giants, minus 33. The Chargers are minus 31. Tampa is minus 30. Washington minus 3, and Minnesota is minus 1.
Yeah, the Vikings stink. And what that stat tells you is, for a lot of those teams, is either they have one giant flaw on each side of the ball, right? Like Tampa offensively has been brutal. They're lucky that the Broncos have been such a story. We haven't been talking about how bad they are at scoring. I mean, the touchdown numbers for the Bucs are just as bad as almost for the Broncos. But their defense is really good. For the Vikings, it's the opposite. Their offense can score, but their defense is leaky as hell. And in the losses for the Vikings, their offense got completely blasted by really good defenses with game records, Dallas, Philly, and so on. So, all those teams have a fatal side of the ball. The Jets have a really good defense. They can't score, or they couldn't for a long part of the year until they made the switch to Mike White. So those stats tell you a lot about those teams and being like they have a giant fatal flaw, and the Bucs have a fatal flaw for sure.
Yeah, it's a big problem, and they're lucky to be in the division they're in. The Panthers go on the road in one of the most hostile environments in football in Seattle against the Seahawks, and they get a win. Steve Wilks is now 1 win away, Mark, from having as many wins as Matt Rule's ever had in a season with Carolina.
Yeah.
So he's almost on his 5th win, and he's
Nebraska
coached the team for 8 games.
Nebraska hired the wrong guy. This is a terrible look for Rule. Wilks, I don't know what to do with Wilks. I mean, if the Panthers team makes the playoffs, maybe you keep Wilks. I don't know. He's really found something there.
If the Panthers make the playoffs, Wilks has got to be coach of the year at that point. Can you give that to an interim coach? Probably.
And Darnold's playing good football. Darnold is doing everything he needs to do to show like a Mitch Trubisky, like, hey, I can be a backup in this league for a long time. Like Darnold, they are the Colt McCoys of the world. Like Colt McCoy's like 36 years old. Like the dude's been in the league for 15 years. You know what I mean? Like there's a reason why. Like Darnold is proving that like he's trying to earn that right, and good for him. The Panthers team right now is fun to watch. The Bucs are not. So I'm kind of rooting for the Panthers, got to be honest. And for the Seahawks, the Seahawks, it feels a little bit like injuries are starting to take a hold. they maximized a minimum amount of talent, and they're kind of hitting a little bit of a ceiling, and they're in trouble because they have head-to-head losses against the Lions and someone else who they're going to be battling for. Was it the Giants they lost to, or someone else, or maybe it was
Off the top of my head, I've got to look. They beat the Giants.
Okay. Maybe it's just
I'll look
they
here
had
that
to have loss again, so that's going to hurt them as far as wild card spot. But yeah, listen, the Seahawks, the Seahawks. I'd rather see the Seahawks in the playoffs than the Giants or the Commanders, but I'd rather see the Lions in over all of them. Just for fan bases and all that stuff goes.
And it's just the story and they have that type of juju that maybe they could pull out a surprising playoff win. Who knows? The Chargers get a win at home over the Dolphins, 23-17. Justin Herbert again. I don't get what the whole deal is with Emmanuel Acho on Speak for Yourself and FS1 has just been hammering home that Justin Herbert's only a social media quarterback, and what he means by that is that he has some cool throws that people put out there. And then he's been, diving in on the Tua thing. I think he's rightfully eaten some crow because Herbert's clearly a better quarterback all around than Tua. It's pretty obvious. And the fact that they went head-to-head this week and Herbert outplayed Tua in all of the meaningful moments of this game, it was 23-17. It didn't feel that close really throughout. I felt like the Chargers really outplayed the Dolphins. Problem with the Chargers is I don't know how much you can trust their defense. Even, they're 7-6. They're barely hanging on to getting into the playoffs. This is going to be kind of a tough road for them in the postseason. But if you got Justin Herbert, you can make a lot of things happen.
I think the Chargers will make the playoffs. Look at their remaining schedule. It's very easy. It's opened up for them. They're getting healthy. And the Chargers will be that team that you're saying to yourself, bleep, I do not want to play them right now as I'm you know what I mean? If you're a team hosting, you're not going to love seeing the Chargers come to town. Even more important for that overall number one seed to avoid that kind of upset hot team in the wild card round, getting that one seed.
They play the Colts and the Rams, or the Titans, Colts, and Rams the next 3 weeks, and then finish things up with the Broncos. Not too bad.
Yeah, they should win out. Like if Staley wants to keep his job, win out, get to the playoffs, and then go upset someone in the first round of the playoffs. And for the Dolphins, I'll just say this: I still like the Dolphins, but now we've seen again the Dolphins remind me a little bit of like, hey guys, remember that September and November, December are different months. And like this is a long season. And you're getting a little bit more tape, be a little more physical on the line with the receivers. You can kind of rattle them a little bit. Tua can still make plays, but I mean, when Tua's off, it can look really bad. Like that was horrendous. 4 of 17 or whatever he started the game with. Just that's bad.
Very bad.
Really, really bad. And so, and the Dolphins are a little one-dimensional. Like, where's the run game to lean on, stuff like that. Good defense. I think the Dolphins will make the playoffs, but I mean, I haven't believed in the Dolphins to make a run anyway. So I felt like this was right. This game went the way I felt it should.
The Chargers defense is pretty bad. So the Dolphins really had an opportunity to take advantage of them here. Finally, the Patriots at the Cardinals. Patriots win 27-13. We talked about the Kyler Murray injury being, the big noteworthy story of this one. There was that moment with Devontae Parker. It was kind of crazy. I mean, he got hit so hard. He went to line up again, could barely stand, was trying to get his balance at the line of scrimmage, and his own fellow receiver, Nelson Aguilar, had to take a knee and was trying to signal, like, we need to get someone out here. Like, we can't run this play. Good on Nelson Aguilar to look out for a teammate, but kind of a weird sequence. Nonetheless, the Cardinals seasons, it's over. And they were barely hanging on by a thread. The Patriots, it's still more of like, what do you make of it? You beat the Cardinals. I didn't see anything super exciting from Mac Jones in this game to tell you, we're really confident in this guy for the next 3 years. I think the Patriots are going to be a team that's really going to have to look, because the thing is, they're 7-6. They are finding ways to win games amidst all of this chaos. So that's kind of impressive. But is this really how you're going to just want to win over the next however many years with Mac Jones at quarterback? I mean, you could do worse, but are you going to find yourself in kind of quarterback purgatory? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'll save a lot of that for the offseason to try to figure out what the hell's going to happen with the Patriots. I mean, because you're absolutely right. There's so many questions like that. I tweeted out jokingly, but not so serious. Like, it's not a hot take for if I'm Mac Jones to say, I want to trade if you don't bring in an offensive coordinator. Like, you know what I mean?
Oh, sure.
Like, I don't think that's a hot take. And people will be like, well, Mac Jones can't demand anything. I would demand an offensive coordinator if I'm Mac Jones. Like, give me a flipping chance, right? I'll just say riding out the rest of the year, the Patriots absolutely could sneak into the playoffs because Mac Jones doesn't turn the ball over. They play very conservatively, and Judon and that defense can be fierce. So they have a chance to make a little bit of a run. Well, what will that mean? Like last year, just one and done in the playoffs? I don't know. But Mac Jones brings you to the playoffs 2 years in a row, rookie and second year. Like, that's something, right? That's something for him to be like, I think Mac Jones will be the starter day one next year, unless the Patriots can somehow shock the world and do some back channel deals to get an Aaron Rodgers, to get Tom Brady to come back. I think they'll big name shop. I don't think they'll Derek Carr shop. I think they'll big name shop. If they can make a big move, maybe those are the only two out there. I think they would. But otherwise, I think Mac Jones is your starter next year. And especially if he can lead you to the playoffs with flipping Matt Patricia calling the plays.
The problem for the Patriots is they have the Raiders next week. Very well could win that game. But then Bengals, Dolphins, Bills to end the season. And it's at
tough.
Buffalo. They could easily go 1-3 over that stretch and really find themselves in a tough spot.
You probably need to go 4-1 to feel confident you can make the playoffs. If you got to get to 10 wins, 10-7 would do it.
Yeah, 3-1. Yeah,
3
would get them there.
So it's a that's a tough stretch. It is.
It really is. So,
but if they're able to win two, if they're able to upset the Bills or beat the Dolphins, and then who knows what the Bengals are playing for the last.
Yeah, I mean, 9-8 could get them in.
Well, yeah, but again, that would show me a lot about like where they're headed. Like those are 3 playoff teams they're about to play, 3 of their next 4, and so if they can win 2 of those if they go 2-1 in that Bills, Dolphins, Bengals stretch, I mean, those are 3 playoff teams.
And then you'd be left to wonder, Mac Jones saying, imagine what we could do with a actual OC on the staff. So yeah, all good points there. All right, that does it for our week 14 recap. I don't know if you want to get to a Super Bowl playing update or you want to save it for next week.
Yeah, I'll post it on the social media this week.
Perfect. All right, excellent. So we'll be on the lookout for that. But that will do it for this week 14 recap here on the Football Lounge with Mark and Dan.